Thank you, George. George, can you teach me how to do that someday? Just the end part. I want to do the big flourish at the end. All right, everybody. You had a good break. You had a long enough break, I hope, to honor your bodies and get a little bit of rest, connection with people. That's important. People are still filing in. I don't want people to not be present for our next speaker. Andy started us off today. So good. And here we go. We're keeping on going. I do want to say, after Ian's talk and then after our dialogue, want you to stay put because we've got a special treat. Those of you who have been here before know what a pleasure it is to have the Singing Quakers, our choir, come. So they're going to come after this and do that. That leads us into our lunch time. So they're still filing in. Come on, people. If I do it loud enough, everyone outside, the doors will close. There'll be weeping and gnashing of teeth. You will not enter the kingdom. That's not good theology, is it? At all. That's not good. So, I guess I'll tell a joke. Why don't dinosaurs make good pets? Because they're dead. They're all... There you go. Are you sure? Don't stop. How does an Englishman invite a dinosaur for lunch? Tea, Rex? Tea? Okay, that's it. We're done. Our next speaker, I'm so glad that he said yes to being with us, Ian Morgan Cron. I'm working on some nicknames for him. I've got two. One is IMAC, IMC, IMAC. Have you had that one in my first? No? The other one is Run IMC, after the rap group, Run DMC. So I'm trying both. You tell me if either one works. Ian Morgan Cron. I started listening to Typology years ago. It's the best podcast on the Enneagram. Learned so much. He's fun, he's funny, engaging, wise, is known for being an expert in the Enneagram, but his latest book, The Fix on the 12 Steps, is honest and beautiful and funny and invites us into that, invites that with his own life. Gosh, I could go on and on about all of his accomplishments. He wouldn't care for that if I did it, but he is phenomenal. So let's welcome to the stage, Ian Morgan Cron.
All right, people, we're going to start with something really strange. I'm going to ask you for the purposes of transition into presence, to do a spiritual exercise with me called Sounding God. Sounding God. So, historically, we tend to think of illustrations about the nature of the Trinity through visual media, right? So you think of all the different visual illustrations that try to capture the truth of the Trinity, but what you're about to discover is that God is tonal. Best understood tonally. So in a moment, I'm going to ask us to move into silence. And then after a few moments, I'm going to begin to chant the word shalom. Okay? And then I'm going to invite you to join me. And we're going to sing it in unison. In unison. Okay? And then at some point, as we do this, which will go longer than you thought, okay? I'm going to invite those of you who know that you have the gift of harmony. To interject it, meaning you can sing the third, the fifth, the ninth, the major seventh, the augmented fourth, I don't care, but just bring whatever comes up in you, okay? After we're done, we're going to glide into silence again. And when I mean glide into silence, just imagine the way that a swan descends on a lake, and then the wings come out, the brakes come on, and they just gently glide onto the surface of silence, okay? And we're just going to sit with that for a moment. And then I'll open us in prayer and ruin the whole experience with my talk. Okay? So if you would, uncross your legs, sit up straight so that your diaphragm isn't, hunched over like this. I invite you to close your eyes. And if you would, take just a 1 or 2 deep cleansing breaths. In a moment, I'll start. Shalom. Shalom. Join me. Shalom. 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 Harmony, please. Shalom. 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 Big. Shalom. Again. Shalom. And again. Shalom. Sing it over your children. Shalom. Over your grandchildren. Shalom. Over this country. Shalom. Over your childhood. Shalom. Over your broken hearts. Shalom. Over your joys. Shalom. 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 And big. Shalom. Open my lips and my mouth shall proclaim your praise. Create me a new heart. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable to you, O good and gracious God. Amen. I love that practice. And by the way, I got the best seat in the house for it. Just this wash, And so part of the beautiful thing about that exercise is when we think about the Trinity, which of course is impossible to capture, so we have to default to metaphor. But it's as if God is a triad. Ba, ba, ba. Three separate but connected, intermingling realities with their own identities, but one mutually pointing and enhancing and celebrating the other's. It's really a remarkable thing to think about music that way. And maybe that's part of the reason music is so powerful, right? Is it at its core, heavens sing. Right? I want to begin this morning by reading to you a very short story written by, of all people, the godmother of punk music, Patti Smith. Because the night belongs to Henry. Some of you are old enough to remember. This guy just went like this. Like that. It's my show, dude. Patti Smith, also National Book Award winner, actually a brilliant literary figure in many ways. This first appeared in the New Yorker magazine about 15 years ago. And I want you to listen very closely because actually it is a beautiful literary retelling of the gospel, perhaps the best I've ever heard. She writes, "When I was 10 years old, I lived with my family in a small ranch house in rural South Jersey. I often accompanied my mother to the A&P to buy groceries. We did not have a car, so we walked and I would help her carry the bags. My mother had to shop very carefully as my father was on strike. She was a waitress, and her paycheck and tips barely sustained us. One day, while she was weighing prices, a promotional display for the World Book Encyclopedia caught my eye. The volumes were cream-colored with forest green spines stamped in gold. Volume 1 was 99 cents with a $10 purchase. All I could think of as we combed the aisles for creamed corn, dry milk, cans of Spam, and shredded wheat was the book which I coveted with all my being. I stood at the register with my mother, holding my breath as the cashier rang up the items. It came to over $11. My mother produced a 5, some singles, and a handful of change. As she was counting out the money, I somehow found the courage to ask for the encyclopedia. Could we get one? I said, showing her the display. It's only 99 cents. I did not understand my mother's mounting anxiety. She didn't have enough change and had to sacrifice a large can of LeSueur peas to pay the amount. Not now, Patricia, she said sternly. Today is not a good day. I packed the groceries and followed her home, crestfallen. The next Saturday, my mother gave me $1 and sent me to the A&P alone. 2 quarts of milk and a loaf of bread. That's what $1 bought in 1957. I went straight to the World Book display. There was only one first volume left, which I placed in my cart. I didn't need a cart, but I took one so I could read as I went up and down the aisles. A lot of time went by, but I had little concept of time, a fact that often got me in trouble. I knew I had to leave, but I couldn't bear to part with the book. Impulsively, I put it inside my shirt and zipped up my plaid windbreaker. I was a tall, skinny kid, and I'm certain every contour of the book was conspicuous. I strolled the aisles for several more minutes, then went home through the checkout, paid my $, swiftly bagged the 3 items, and headed home with my heart pounding. Suddenly, I felt a heavy tap on my shoulder and turned to find the biggest man I had ever seen. He was the store detective, and he asked me to hand it over. I just stood in silence. We know you stole something. You will have to be searched. Horrified, I slid the heavy book out from the bottom of my shirt. He looked at it quizzically. This is what you stole? An encyclopedia? Yes, I whispered, trembling. Why didn't you ask your parents? I did, I said, but they didn't have the money. Do you know it's wrong? Yes. Do you go to church? Yes, twice a week. You're going to have to tell your parents what you did. No, please. Then I will do it. What's the address? I was silent. Well, I'll have to walk you home. No, please, I'll tell them. Do you swear? Yes, sir. Yes. My mother was agitated when I arrived home. Where were you? I needed the bread for your father's sandwiches. I told you to come right home. And suddenly, everything went green, like right before a tornado. My ears were ringing. I felt dizzy, and I threw up. My mother tended to me immediately, as she always did. She had me lie on the couch and got a cold towel for my head and sat by me with her anxious expression. What is it, Patricia? She asked. Did something bad happen? Yes, I whispered. I stole something. I told her about my lust for the book, my wrongdoing, the big detective. My mother was a good mother, but she could be explosive, and I tensed, waiting for the barrage of verbal punishment, the sentencing that always seemed to outweigh the crime. But she said nothing. She told me that she would call the store and tell the detective I had confessed and that I should sleep. When I awoke, sometime later, the house was silent. My mother had taken my siblings to the field to play. I sat up and noticed a brown paper bag with my name on it. I opened it, and inside was the World Book Encyclopedia, Volume 1. Like young Patti Smith, we all know what it's like to desperately want something, to ache, to yearn, to hunger. In short, we all know what it's like to experience the often overwhelming power of desire. Don't we? Am I alone, people? Now, to be clear, desire is kind of a double-edged sword, right? Because desire makes us restless. We feel incomplete, as if we're going through life as fractions wanting to become whole numbers. Dissatisfied, in quietude. But here's the deal. despite the afflictive emotions that sometimes come with being overcharged with desire, it is good and it is God-given. Don't make the unfortunate leap of erotic, always thinking of desire as being something that's in a category of the erotic. But even that desire is good. Right? Desire inspires and fuels transformation and growth, right? It is the animating energy that launches us into life on a quest to discover who we are and whose we are, to pursue vocation, to establish friendships and lifelong partnership. It sparks and fires creativity and the imagination. But listen to me, first and foremost, God plants the seed of desire in our hearts to draw us to Himself. But of course, as with everything in our riven and fallen world, desire can go off the rails. Briefly consider with me for a moment the tale of young Patti Smith and her strange obsession with a World Book encyclopedia. What happens when desire veers off course and obsessively attaches to something that bends our wills, compromises our values, and under the spell of obsession and compulsion robs us of our freedom? Well, my friends, you end up with an addiction. So since the release of my book, The Fix, the subtitle of the book is How the 12 Steps Offer a Surprising Path of Transformation for the Well-Adjusted, the Down and Out, and Everyone in Between. There are more words on the cover of the book than there are inside. But at least you'll know what it's about. Since its publication, people have begun to ask me, can you define an addiction and its principal underlying cause? Because addictions confuse people, right? We're confused about addictions. So here's my best shot at it. Addiction arises when the unquenchable human desire for union with God misdirects and pathologically bonds with a person, a behavior, or a substance. I'll say it again because that's pretty much all I got today. All right? Addiction arises when the unquenchable human desire for union with God misdirects and pathologically bonds with a behavior, a substance, or a person. It's what happens when our fiery, God-given desire for the infinite attaches to the finite. Now, don't misunderstand me. I'm a therapist. I know that addiction is a maddeningly complicated condition with biological, neurological, genetic, emotional, social, and trauma-based components. But at its core, it is a disorder of desire. Now, the view that addiction is principally a spiritual malady is really, it's not original with me, far from it. Recently, I've been reading a series of letters that Bill Wilson, the founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, author of the 12 Steps, had with Carl Jung, the famous Swiss psychiatrist. And in one letter, they discussed the case of a mutual acquaintance, an alcoholic named Roland Hazard, who years earlier had been a patient of Jung's. So describing what he observed in Roland Hazard, Jung concludes in the letter, his craving for alcohol was the equivalent on a low level of the spiritual thirst of our being for wholeness, expressed in medieval language, for union with God. St. Augustine. You know, sometimes I'll be working with a sponsee in my 12-step recovery program, and we'll be doing a 5th step, which is all about admitting to God, to yourself, and to another human being the exact nature of your wrongs. And there'll be, snot flying and tears flowing, and I'm getting a confession of all kinds of crazy behaviors and things done and regrets. And they'll say something like this: I am the worst of all sinners. And I'll be like, don't flatter yourself. I mean, St. Augustine, a man who would himself identify as a sex and love addict, full-blown. He's the patron saint of beer in the Catholic Church. Think about that. That is true. He is the patron saint of brewers. What a legacy. What a legacy, right? You're not so bad. He taught that sin bends our longing for union with God inward. The term he uses is incurvatus in se, so that our desires become distorted. So instead of resting in God, which is, we all know the great trope, which I refuse to say out loud because it's been quoted so many times, about finding rest in God, right? That our hearts are restless, right? Instead of resting in God, we affix to lesser things and become enslaved by them. He called this concupiscentia, or disordered desire. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. I speak to Christians a lot. This is what some of you are thinking. Oh, this is terrible. Those poor addicts and alcoholics. They really need our prayer. Not so fast, cowgirl. Addiction is not limited to drugs and alcohol. People become compulsively and obsessively addicted to work, relationships, cue codependency, success, power, money, food, adrenaline, control, sex, approval, fame, reputation, shopping, knowledge, technology, political viewpoints, to name only a few. In short, I know one thing about every single person in this room. You're an addict. This is not reserved for some subset of the population that we like to, I think, in some ways, other, so we can project our refusal to acknowledge our own addictions and heave it onto them and say, well, we'll pray for you. Pray for us. Pray for us. In short, all of us are addicts. It is a universal human problem. We are, in the words of Carl Jung, all of us, frustrated mystics. That's what Carl Jung called addicts and alcoholics, frustrated mystics. We all have sticky fingers. All of us. Now, listen, as an Episcopal priest, as a therapist, as a person myself in recovery for alcoholism and drug addiction, a story unto itself. Addiction makes idolaters of us all. It forces us to worship our objects of attachment, thereby preventing us from truly, freely loving God and one another. So anyone interested in the conversation around spiritual formation and the healing of the soul, anyone interested in that conversation that does not turn their eye toward the problem of addiction in their own life is missing an essential part of the curriculum called sanctification. What do you want? You want shalom. You want what we just did. Shalom not meaning the absence of conflict, though a fair definition, but meaning wholeness. You desire wholeness. You want the psychological, the emotional, the spiritual, the social, the ecological ruptures that are in your life to be healed and to be whole for one dang second. And that desire is good. But it's wicked uncomfortable. It makes us restless. It makes us feel incomplete, dissatisfied, discontent. And so we go looking for a mistress. Something that will heal the ache of being human. We ache. And we go looking for fixes for the ache that enslave us in the end. Now, let's just close and take a collection, shall we? I mean, let's just end on that happy note, shall we? Here's the good news. Here's the good news. What we learn at the end of Patti Smith's Sticky Fingers is that the story of our addictions, and by the way, our earliest church mothers and fathers would have called them attachments. They wouldn't have had a clinical word like addiction. They called them attachments. It doesn't have to end in shame or secrecy or hiding and tragedy. By the way, tangentially, can we please all just normalize the conversation around being broken? Can we just stop hiding? Our addictions, when fully in the sway of the Spirit, can become our teachers. They can become our teachers. They can bring us to our knees and lead us into a miraculous experience of mercy and healing and grace. And they will lead us into a depth of relationship with God we previously didn't even know was available to us. Like Patti, when we finally let go of our addictions and attachments, we discover that God freely gives us the very thing we desired, albeit in His way, in His time, and as a gift, not as the product of a theft. But how, you ask? Yeah. Well, that brings me to the second piece of good news. There is a biblically consistent, evidence-based spiritual path that has been around for 90 years that God has used millions of times to free people like us, not them, those people, us, to free us from our addictions and attachments. And it's just called the 12 steps. So in my book, The Fix, right, I describe how the 12 steps are this design for living, how it works and how to apply it in your life. Through their application, you can join people like me on the road to this thing called recovery. Now, I'll close with this. What is recovery? How many of you have read The Great Divorce? Raise your hands high so I know. Look at all of you literate people. So there's a scene in The Great Divorce. As you know, there's a man, he's a ghost, he has a lizard on his shoulder, and the lizard is whispering in his ear. Everyone remember this? Yeah? And he's like, you can't live without me. You can't live without me. I'm all you got, pal. You can't live without me. And an angel is talking to this ghost, wanting to persuade him to let him kill the lizard on his shoulder so that he can be healed and remain in heaven, right? Like, stay there. And the guy's like, I can't let it go. Can't let it go. Can't let it go. Can't let it go. This thing's going, you're right, you can't let me go. And finally the man relinquishes and says, kill it. And the angel slays the lizard on his shoulder, and it's excruciating, it's agonizing. But suddenly, as it falls to the ground, suddenly the man metamorphosizes, and he becomes no longer a ghost, but an actual man. And then the lizard becomes a beautiful white steed that he mounts and rides into the mountains of heaven. That's recovery. That is my story, and it can, or perhaps is, yours. Now, I know a lot about the statistics on addiction. And some of you in this room, I know, just by virtue of pure numbers, Quaker or not, even Quaker can be junky. So, like here's the deal. Some of you are suffering profoundly. And you're mired in shame and grief and regret. You feel alone. Don't flatter yourself. You're not the worst of all sinners. In fact, you're not even a sinner. Listen to me. Get out of the habit of saying, I'm a sinner. Say this instead. I'm a beloved sinner. Got to have that modifier in there. There is a solution. And there is hope. I remember being in rehab, reading that phrase, there is a solution, in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And as it turns out, grace, not addiction, gets the last word. Thank you.
There we go. Well, you're seated at the right hand of Jim. You chose wisely, I'm kidding.
Can I lean my head on your breast?
That would get him talking. Let's give him something to talk
Let's
about.
give them something to talk about.
You sing it. Holy cow. This is interesting, I think, to you. It should be. Maybe it's not. He wasn't going to give a talk at this conference. He's like, I don't really want to give a talk. I don't like monologues. Let's just dialogue. And I said, okay, he's Ian Morgan Cron. He can, if he said it, then that's what we'll do. But then I prayed against it. And I'm not joking, like 3 weeks ago, he calls and says, hey, I think I'm going to give a talk. We can still do the dialogue, but I think I'm going to give a talk. Went. Power of prayer. That was fantastic. Seriously. Oh, you pack so much into. My notes are all over the place, and everything's these brilliant pearls of wisdom, and
Yeah, and you did a tic-tac-toe right
I got everything.
Well, wait a minute, that's Kurt's handwriting. You guys were while I was speaking.
Yeah, he won, by the way. He beat me in tic-tac and toe. Where do we start? Because, I had some questions, but, okay. I think the most profound thing you're saying, and it ran through the whole thing, is the longing for the more than.
Yes.
You talked about the ache, the yearn, the hunger, the desire, the incomplete, and that's God's, in a way, a trap. Like God has planted that in us, the only thing that's going to satisfy that. And I love that that image of the more than. That's how I process it. Is like there's nothing that this world can do. It's always more than. It's the Bono song. Like I still haven't found what I'm looking for. I've been. I can't get it because it's only found in God. But the desire veers off course. That was so brilliant, and attaches the infinite desire attaches to the finite. Use the Latin incurvatus and say, and Voskamp talked about that on this stage last year. But why do we curve in? Like why, when that's there, why? What is that thing inside of me that goes, but I'm going to curve in. I'm not going to excurvatus. I'm going to incurvatus. I'm going in. What is that? That is the thing that.
It's interesting. The Buddhists have a great word for this. The word is dukkha.
That's right. D-U-K-K-H-A or
yes.
something. Yeah.
And dukkha, I love that word because actually it's the word for suffering, right? So the Buddhists talk about life as suffering, but we misinterpret that as being life sucks, right? What the Buddhist is actually saying is, the best translation of that word of dukkha is the feeling of not at home. You all know that feeling, right? Mm-hmm. That pining, that yearning for the transcendent, that desire to be fused with God. And it can create beautiful symphonies, Mahler's Fifth, or, Beethoven's oratorio, Bach's oratorios, or, it can create beauty, that desire, that feeling we have, can create beautiful things, and it can also curve in on itself and destroy the host. Right? And, oftentimes I think about some of our greatest artists whose lives have ended tragically in suicide. It's almost as though they came into life overcharged with desire. And they were unable to steward properly the desire. They had no God, they did not have a container, and so it was just brimming over, right? Until it eventually consumed itself. Right? So part of the journey of healing is also learning in recovery, which I hope everyone gets into, by the way, that how do we steward desire properly so that it is generative and creative and life-giving and does not become toxic and really poisonous to our systems.
And turns us in. Yeah, and I love when you said toward the end, I felt a little surge of energy when you said, "Can we just stop hiding?" I mean, Kurt, he is sort of the Sultan of shame. I call him that. He just knows everything about shame. Maybe you're the Sultan of swing. That's another musical guy that you are. Is that okay, Kurt? Sultan? That's not okay. I just shamed him. I mean, it seems like addictions have to hide. They have to hide.
That's their nature.
Yeah, why is that?
Self-protection, because they know, I think, our attachments. I don't want to give them an intelligence. That would seem silly, because they're pretty feral, really. That I think they know that they are protected in the dark and they can be maintained in the dark, right? That's why one of the great things about recovery programs is the power of community. We have to bring the darkness into the light. We have to normalize what we're not getting right. Talking about it openly. And not, I was on a podcast recently and I got a little tetchy.
Okay.
Because I did I did over 100 podcasts marketing this book. And this guy he's a British podcaster, and he said to me, essentially, he said, "Oh, your books, you've sold over 1 million copies of that book, and you're a priest, and you're a therapist, and you're all these things, and you suffered a relapse. How did that happen?" So I said to him, because I got a little touchy, I looked at him and I said, "Let me tell you what you're really asking me right now. Aren't you ashamed of yourself?" And I said, "Do you want me to be?" And unfortunately, in human communities, for a whole host of reasons, we end up treating each other in such a way that it leaves very little space for honesty. We're still in reputation management in the body of Christ. And that's what makes AA is so, NA, OA, all these programs so beautiful is everybody knows you didn't show up because you're on a winning streak. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just came here because I'm doing great.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I got 4 DUIs, but here I am, doing great. And I'm like, why can't what's happening in the basement of churches and those 12-step meetings happen upstairs?
Yeah.
Because, I hate to say it, I say this as a priest, right, who's been attached to parishes. There are more miracles happening downstairs than there are upstairs. And so we have to find a way to create a safe place for people, to use your word, to bring the narrative of their story and all of the cockamamie ways that they came up with to deal with the pain of living in a riven world so that they can let them go and find the one who is the only one who can give them what their heart desires.
Amen. Amen. Yeah, that's so powerful. And you're right. That's what's happening in those basements, man.
And I love what's happening upstairs, to be
Absolutely.
clear. I mean, I'm a priest, and there's so many good things happening upstairs, but there's some big chunks missing. And this is one of them. Can you imagine if you could advertise church as, hey, guess what? On Easter, we're going to have acrobats and like a 28-piece band and $1 million sound system. And people are like, people are so used to spectacle now. Spectacle sucks. I appreciate that I'm in a Quaker institution, by the way, because, it's all stripped down, baby. You know
That's
what I mean?
right.
But what if you could advertise your church this way? Come and join a group of people who know that you are as screwed up as they are, who are trying to figure out how to live in this world as whole human beings under the loving tutelage and guidance of a all-loving God, and where you can be healed. I don't know, that sounds pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. That is so good. That is so good. Okay, I feel like we need to talk about the Enneagram because you are the Enneagram. Is that okay? And we're not going to talk about the Enneagram. We're not going to talk about the Enneagram.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
No, I mean,
My wife calls it the Enneagram now, just so you know. I've been riding that horse for 10 years, people.
I don't want to go there now. I don't. You
It
successfully.
brings up some troubling visuals, I know.
It does. I can't unsee that.
No, but go there, that's fine.
You want to?
Sure.
Okay. Well, because, I've listened to your podcast yeah, typology. So good, isn't it? And I know you've done narrative therapy. And so when I was talking about, like, what are the stories we're telling ourselves? What are those shaming stories? If we could just quickly in a sentence go through the 1 through 9, what's the story? What's the story that a 1 is telling themselves? By the way, how many people know your Enneagram number? Okay, wow.
It's a virus. It's like COVID.
Everyone else put on a mask.
So, okay, really fast.
Yep.
The story that ones tell themselves is that I am afraid of being corrupt, I must be good, and I must perfect myself, others, in the world in order to be loved. 2s, I cannot be loved for who I am, but only for what I do for other people. 3s, I cannot be loved for who I am, but only for my success, my achievements. 4s, I can't be loved for who I am, therefore I must be special and unique. How am I doing, by the way? 5s, the world is a frightening place that is depleting and draining, and the only way I can fight off ineptitude and the fear of my own inadequacy is by retreating into the cavern of my mind and observing the world from a distance rather than participating in it and collecting knowledge and information to fend off those feelings of inadequacy. 6s, the world is a terribly frightening place, and in order to survive, I must live in a posture of hypervigilance, watching for what could go wrong at any given moment. And what I yearn for more than anything else is safety, security, and support. 7s, the world too is a dangerous and frightening place. And rather than deal with my anxiety through pessimism, as 6s are wont to do, I will deal with it with optimism. And I will pursue a life of future-minded, unlimited possibilities to fend off my anxiety about this world of ours that so scares me. 8s, the 8 has this belief that we live in a might makes right world where the strong dominate and the weak are taken advantage of. They say, I'm never going to live like that. I refuse to do that. So they assert strength and control over others in the environment in order to mask tenderness and vulnerability. And 9s, I love 9s. I got 9s here.
They're happy about being 9s.
Yeah, they are. Don't be too happy. It has a shadow side. And the shadow is this. My presence doesn't matter as much as other people's presence. And everyone else's seems overcharged with desire, and my desire seems very small compared to theirs. So why not just merge with theirs and just go with their program of life so as not to upset the apple cart? Why don't I just, merge with the preferences and the opinions of the group, and in the process, kind of self-erase and avoid conflict at all costs, because I want everything to be peaceful inside and out.
How about that? Yeah, I think you just every one. That's right on. The fact that you can tell that story, like that you hear it so much from the people you interact with on the show, of all 9. It's just so consistent, isn't it? Every one, it fits.
Yeah. Yeah, but to be clear, right? I want to just say this because, and I say this all the time, but you're new, so what the heck? The Enneagram, there's a quote in my book, you used it last night, George Box, the statistician, who says, all models are wrong, some are useful. Everybody listen to me. The Enneagram is wrong. It's a model. It gives you, it's dealing in approximations. It is giving you low definition pictures of the interior architecture of different kinds of people. That's it. Now, if you get 10% more clarity about your inner world and that of other people, I think that is a giant evolutionary leap step forward. Yeah. But you're only going to get about 10% out of the Enneagram. Human beings are marvelously complex and mysterious. The Enneagram it is not an MRI of your inner world. And sometimes I meet people who have this relationship with the Enneagram that is crypto-religious. And I'm like, y'all need to back off. It's good, but it's not like frothy mouth good,
Says the expert on the Enneagram. Well, says the world-renowned.
There goes book sales.
Famous, yeah, boy.
Sorry, IVP.
Sorry, publisher. Yeah. Gosh. So much good stuff. I mean, man, thank you again. I mean, I can't even now imagine if you didn't give that talk. It's like to think back when you were like, no, I'm going to give a talk. That talk was phenomenal. I'm going to watch it again. So let's give thanks. I am iMac, Ian Morgan Cron. Thank you so much. Appreciate it, brother. Love it. So good.